Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Rin. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. How are you doing? I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Recently, someone gave me this photo book they had made of a bunch of different pictures of mushrooms they had taken because I really love mushrooms and they knew that. And I have really been wanting to paint some mushrooms using those photos as a reference. So today, that's what we're doing. Mushrooms are one of my most favorite things to draw. I love to draw stylized mushrooms. These obviously are not super stylized. I did try to stay semi-true to what they look like in real life, but there is definitely still some of my style in there. So I am back with my actual watercolor sketchbook. It was really nice to return to the sketchbook after not using it for a couple weeks. I feel like it always really makes me appreciate painting on actual watercolor paper again and how nicely everything blends and how easy it is. Like the water doesn't absorb into the paper right away, so it's just really easy to get those kind of, I don't know, that like classic watercolor effect, which was very much what I wanted to do with this. I wanted to keep all of these mushrooms fairly simple, which this first mushroom I'm working on right now, I did do pretty simply, and then as I progressed and do more, each get a little more complicated. So I started with just like some basic colors and just kind of wanted to create a variation from that like more warm red toned brown to that like more rich chocolatey brown. And then I didn't really know too well how to even add details to this mushroom, so you will have seen I just put some dots down on it and then I just kind of smudged them with my finger to kind of just get some splotches of color variation on the cap of the mushroom, if that makes sense. I used, I think, every palette I owned for this. Here I'm just kind of smudging out those like little details, I guess, I was trying to add in again, just to kind of soften them, because I didn't want anything on this entire page to be too harsh. I wanted all of the lines to stay pretty soft. I also wanted to line all of this art with watercolor. I didn't want to use my colored pencils or ink. I just strictly wanted to use watercolor, and really was trying to get as clean of lines as I could get with my watercolor. Here I'm going back over that line art with some water, just a clean damp brush, just to help smooth out those lines and make them as soft, like I said, as I possibly could. These mushrooms I struggled with a little bit, so I mixed up this particular shade of gray using my vintage pastels palette. I did it with like some gray and I added some like mauve. There's a mauve color in this palette that I really love, so I wanted to have a little bit of a pink tone to these, just to add a little bit more color and make them not straight gray. I just wanted some color variation because I like colors so much, and I'm really happy with the color I mixed for them. But I was trying to think how to do those like speckles on the caps of the mushrooms, and my original thought was I was going to try and make those by like not putting a lot of water on my brush and like doing like a dry paint stroke. I hope that makes sense. I think that's what it's called, like when you make a stroke of paint and there's less water. You'll end up seeing that didn't really work how I wanted it to, so I just kind of ended up doing like lines and squiggles, and it ends up looking okay. Here I'm trying to do that and my brush was still too wet. Here I'm starting to get a little bit of that effect, but I still didn't like how it looked. I felt like it looked too harsh, so I again tried, like I said, to just do some squiggles, and then I went over it with like a damp brush again, a clean damp brush, and just tried to soften all of those lines. Also here you can really see some of that pink pulling out or coming out underneath the gray, and I just really liked the pop of color that added to these particular mushrooms. I also really enjoyed these mushrooms, painting these a lot because they were pretty straightforward, but I also liked them because there was a lot of like small detail work. And I know I've talked about this before, but it tends to be like the thing I always, when I'm like getting ready to paint, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do all that small detail work because it's a little tedious. But once I get going doing that small detail work, it's honestly like my favorite part. A lot of times I don't even film when I'm doing that kind of detailing because I just kind of get going and I kind of zone out, and it's too hard for me to remember to keep moving the camera around and making sure I'm filming like in frame and stuff. So a lot of times I don't even film that while I'm doing it, but I tried to capture as much of it as I could while doing these paintings here of these mushrooms. This mushroom I'm working on right now ended up being my most favorite, so I started with that blue. I wanted to get, again, some pops of color, and then mixed some gray and purple and that mauve pink again to get like the gray color on the cap. And then I just straight up added some purple here to the like stalk and stuff. Here you can really see some of the purple. I tried to make this gray tone more purple than I did on the mushrooms I painted before this one, to just not have them all look exactly the same. I also really wanted to do the highlights like by not painting in spaces and not use my Posca pen on these. And I was really nervous starting that because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of guessing on where to not put paint down, but I ended up being really happy with how all of them turned out in that way. I'm super happy I did that. I feel like these look very, like when I think of watercolor art, I very much think of watercolor or pieces painted like this. So I'm really happy that I was able to achieve it in a way that at least I think looks good. And then here I'm painting all the like little line details on the cap of the mushroom, and then again just going over it with a clean damp brush to just soften up all those harsh edges. I also really loved that I started with teal and then put that more like sky blue over top of it on the cap of this mushroom. I feel like that color layering really helped add a little bit more depth than it would have if I had just done that sky blue and not started with the teal. And then I'm sorry, I don't know why my camera decided to focus on my hand in these shots because I thought I fixed it, but it like kind of goes between, so I'm sorry about that. But here I'm starting to paint this mushroom. This was by far the mushroom I was most nervous to paint because I wasn't sure at all how to do it. I ended up really being happy with how this one turned out, though I kind of wish I had some higher contrast between this like caramel color and then the dark brown I'll end up putting in here in just a minute. But even still, I'm still happy with how this turned out because I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out good or not. I feel like that's how all my paintings are. I start them because I would never have tried even painting probably really at all if I wasn't doing YouTube. I was very much just somebody who kind of just doodled for fun. And I think that's the great thing about doing YouTube for me personally is I actually have motivation to try to do things. I would have just been like, there's no way I could do that otherwise. But so many of my paintings start as like me thinking, I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing and this might turn out absolutely terribly, and then usually being pleasantly surprised it didn't turn out as bad as I was expecting it to. So that being said, I very much started this with that thought of like, I have no clue what I'm doing and this might look really bad and I hope I don't mess up the entire page because the rest of the mushrooms had been turning out so well. But I'm very thankful. This turned out really well in the end, actually. So I pretty much just put down, like I said, that caramel color and then started adding in that like chocolatey brown and then started adding details for this mushroom. That's about all I did. Again, using a clean damp brush in some spots like I am right here, just to soften some things. But a lot of these lines I actually didn't do that with, and I just kind of let them be a little bit rough because the overall shape of the mushroom is so, like, it's a little hard to tell. It's so frilly and it doesn't have a lot of structure. So I was hoping some of those more structured lines in the details would help add definition where it was needed. I think I'm learning, like, at least at my level of skill right now, details make a huge difference. Like the more effort you put into it, the better it looks generally. But I don't know if that's like just because I still have a lot to learn and I'm still kind of a newbie at watercolors, or if that's an in general statement. I know like rendering generally is what takes the longest time and is usually what makes your art look really good. So I guess this is really just rendering. Also, I didn't film it, but on both of the gray toned mushrooms I did, and on this one, I do think you see it a little bit here. I ended up going in with some black and just lining in some spots I felt like needed a higher level of contrast. And I was so proud of myself for using my black watercolor and not watering it down. Like I legit used the black pretty opaque. So this is how it turned out. I'm really happy with how it turned out. These were super fun to paint. If you want like a really nice, easy thing to paint that's just very calming, I highly recommend painting mushrooms. If you're still watching, thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember to be kind and stay cozy. Bye!